So well, now this EPICA is being recorded. Hello, everyone. For the ones who didn't know me, my name's Michael, and well, uh, I'll be with you during this EPICA about academic writing in research. The idea is that we're going to check like the basics on academic research writing, especially. And I'm going to give you some ideas, some of them pretty basic, and maybe you'll think that they are a bit repeated, but some of them might be useful for you to understand how to approach or how to, let's say, how to see in a different light what academic writing might look like today. So, well, what we're doing is we're starting with some concepts and recommendations, and then they're going to evolve into more specific sentences. And to finish, we're going to check out some of the formats that you have to fill out if you have any questions. I don't know if that sounds okay to you.
Yes,
Yep,
teacher.
great. So, well, first things first, we're going to say the foundations of academic writing. Um, we're going to see the research proposal components that some of you uploaded in the previous delivery. I'm going to base some of the findings, some of my findings, just to show you how this is going to work. Then we're going to see how we're going to translate practicum, like our practical phase to research writing. Something about language and style, academic writing, which is no big deal, something real quick. And literature review. How do you do that? I saw some of you did a great work and some of you did a good job, and I think we can always improve it. How about methodology writing? We are not there yet, but we're going to check a little bit about that. And common errors in academic writing that are just a couple of things that are very common. After that, we're going to connect what happens in our practicum to research writing. And we finish with the documentation tips I mentioned. If you have any questions, so I want to start by conceptualizing certain things about academic writing. Okay, when we think about academic writing, we oftentimes believe that it's everything about being formal, which, yes, in a way, but we believe that it's everything about sounding a little bit intelligent or sounding smart, uh, or even we're a little bit too wordy. But no, actually, academic writing is just a discourse, and this is what I have here on top of the slide. Academic writing is a discourse in the sense that we all belong to different discourses, and just academic writing is one of them. So we need to understand that. What is a discourse? Well, actually, there is a linguist called JPG who, in 1998, he defined very well what a discourse could be, and which is an identity kit. Yeah, so discourse is basically an identity kit which works as let's say as a framework to for us to act, talk, think, and even valuing things. So we all belong to multiple discourses at the same time. We belong to the academy discourse, thanks to our university, UNAD, and we also belong to some other discourses outside our university. So the basic thing is that you might have noticed that there are different ways in which we speak, whether we are in the academy or we are in a more informal environment. So it's the same way in which we speak to our friends, to the way we speak to our colleagues at work or our uh, partners in university. So basically, a discourse is a social sphere we belong to, and is a way to act, talk, think, and value in things. So, what is academic writing? Is a discourse in which we are going to value some specific things. What things are we going to value? Well, we're going to value formal tone, that is a selection of words that is uh, words that are complete, usually not phrasal verbs, usually not compound nouns that become too complicated. And also the academic discourse values evidence-based arguments. It means that if I state something as being truth, as being the reality, I'm going to provide evidence, or I'm going to provide sentences or examples that support that argument and that make it as solid as possible. The more, the better. You know, sometimes we can have scientific books that have been written based on one argument, and the entire book is just profound research on examples, situations, even logical reasoning that supports the main argument. So this is basically what that is. Also, academic discourse highly values a clear structure. So if I can follow a map or a path from beginning to end, then that is something that academic discourse highly values. And also, it has an objective perspective. This objective perspective is in two ways, which is number one, being objective as opposed to subjective. Instead, I need to be able, to a certain extent, to get rid of my biases, get rid of my beliefs, or get rid of some, let's say, some different ideas that might uh, influence me to avoid certain conclusions or avoid certain ideas. I have to accept, be really open-minded, and be open-minded means to truly listen and truly let the work and the research come in so that I can conclude, or I can follow the path that the research is showing me, and not me leading the research to wherever I want. I mean, of course, we need to do some guidelines, but the idea is basically this. Well, what are the other key characteristics? Well, there needs to be a purpose in the research context. So you have a practicum side, a practicum scenario, and you need a purpose. You all have done that. And well, of course, in your cases that you're going to be, and you are about to become English teachers, you need to focus precisely on language teaching. Okay. Of course, there are some other elements that are included, but let's say that the main axis or the main topic is based on language teaching. Yes. Well, I know there's a lot of information there, but just before going through the next slide, I don't know if you want to ask a question about this. Okay. You have a question more technical and administrative stuff. Okay. Check that out. So far, so good. Thumbs up. Okay. So, well, remember, academic writing is a discourse, and we just need to understand what this discourse values. Okay. So, well, there are some essential elements to, yes, it's fine. There are some essential elements that are the components of a research proposal. And some of you have gone through some of these elements, but I'm going to show you like what is important to consider. Like the most important thing is the first item here is the research question or the problem statement. Is it what is something that you truly wonder why is happening? And when I say truly wonder, is that we need to understand that it's not what I want to do or what I think the solution to a problem always has been, but it is more about the practical scenario, what's happening there, Why is happening in that particular moment, both in history and why is happening in that particular geographical area. So my research questions has to truly come from a combination of my interests, what I want to know, what I want to explore, uh, where I am in the practicum scenario, and also in what historical moment we are located. Okay, that's super important because we are not because we are influenced by our times. For example, we can I don't know if you have noticed, but many people are learning more and more English just because we have now more access to the internet in many places. So as the access to internet has become ubiquitous and many people can access to videos, podcasts, texts, and more books in English, then more and more people speak English. Well, you know that there are tons of jobs that are being created because many people are capable of this ability. But why can we speak better English nowadays than before? Even though a little bit, and of course we need to improve a lot more as a country. Well, the reason why this is happening is due to the particular historical moment we are inserted in, which is a technological uh, moment in which everyone carries an internet connection and everything is easy to access. So just to give you an example of that, no, of course, your practicum scenarios could be way different to what I'm explaining right here, but it's something very. Number two, we have literature review. Uh, Most of you did a first approach to the literature review, but something that is important to highlight here is that the literature review for academic writing uh, needs to be academic. It means they need to be they need to have been published and produced by university presses, by uh, renowned magazines, by academic websites, so that a bunch of people have been involved in checking whether this is something reliable, whether the research that is presented in this literature has been conducted with the correct methodologies, and also if it has been conducted appropriatedly uh, in terms of ethical questions, also in the terms of the quantitative and qualitative data. So just make sure that your literature review is always coming from uh, credible sources. Those sources are usually found in university magazines, in renowned scientific magazines, psychological magazines, and on the internet, they usually appear with something that is called a DOI. So it means they have been registered uh, and approved by a committee of people who have read the article. Okay, so I know, as obvious as it might sound, a literature review cannot come from a social media, from Wikipedia, not so much from YouTube. It depends on the channel, but it's not recommended. Okay, well, good. We also have the methodology. We'll explore this further, but it's what are you going to do, how you're going to do it, with what instruments or tools, after collecting the information, how you're going to analyze it. And this is the idea of the methodology. It's like just telling a sort of story. It's about what happened first, like what took you to start this research. After that is how did you start to collect information? Uh, when you collected the information, what did you find? What you found? And you're going to also say uh, how this information connected to other points. And finally, well, you're just going to say the analysis of this collected information, the whole process. Expected outcomes now. We're going into number four. Of course, there are some expected outcomes. It means you expect something to happen, but of course, we need to be open to be contradicted or maybe not as definitive as we would like to be. For example, let's say that you want to prove that with certain methods, speaking activities, you can improve English speaking skills in a group of kids or in a group of adolescents. And by the end of the research, it seems that their level has increased, but not as much. So you have to be prepared to conclude that maybe these techniques are just as good as the previous ones, and and be honest about your findings. Let's not try to uh, just fit the outcomes like strong. Of course, we oftentimes have a very good, let's say, very good intuition of what might be happening, and we oftentimes are right, but we need to be prepared to be, let's say, to be contradicted by our own investigation, by the data that we find. It's normal. And finally, a timeline. This is very important because you're going to say what you're going to do in steps 1 to 5. You already did, so I'm not going to touch that much. Okay. Well, we're about to get to the writing part. No worries. Okay. Common pitfalls to avoid, common mistakes, common errors. Well, of course, bias expectations. No, it's like the fact that I expect that whatever I say is right. I just spoke about it. Or two categorical results. Like if you use this, for sure you're going to get these other results. It's not always like that. And we also going to have a, another mistake, which is reviewing little literature or inappropriate for the research question. Yes. Well, actually, we need to read and explore a lot of articles, research papers, magazine articles, magazine texts that support and give like a robust background to the research so that we can point out to the different aspects that have been developed in different investigations or researches around the world or in our countries, sometimes if we are focusing in our countries or regions, and understand that from that vantage point of knowing what is going on in terms of theoretical and practical terms, uh, from that point we can elaborate a much more founded investigation. Okay, so reviewing literature or inappropriate that is not similar to our question is a big mistake there. And also another pitfall is either being too wordy or too straightforward when writing. This is more, let's say I'm going to use an asterisk right here, just to mention that this is about style. No? It's not necessary to sound, as I said before, to sound smart, to sound pompous, uh, writing something. But we also need to avoid being extremely straightforward or extremely informal about what we write. So a good balance is better, and it's okay that we uh, write a sentence in which we explain what we were doing in our research. And if we need to write a second sentence expanding on details, it's totally okay. But we are going to avoid going in circles just to complete a certain number of pages or just because we think it's too little or too much. No, it's okay to keep it well balanced. Not too short, not too long, and especially not too wordy, not too pompous. Yes, need to be clear. Well, this is my favorite part. Yes, this is something that Stuart Green coined in 2019, and before that he had also talked about it. And is the idea that when we have an argument or a research that we in which we want to prove an argument, well, this oftentimes goes especially in the section of the theoretical framework or the literature review. This goes on as a cocktail party. So he uses this metaphor about a cocktail party. So if you imagine that you are at a cocktail party where many guests are having a really animated conversation ongoing, then you come, of course, you come a bit late to this cocktail party. You start going around, listening to different conversations, different people. And there is a group of people that are discussing a topic of your interest. So you go close to this group, you start listening. You start listening attentively. You think, ah, this conversation is interesting, something that I really like. Okay. So you get close, listen attentively for a while, and then maybe you participate and you say some of your points of view, or maybe you walk away and think of the conversation for a little while and elaborate your own ideas, right? Then finally, you return to the conversation, or maybe you join a new conversation about a similar topic, and now you're kind of ready to express your experiences, in this case, in your practicum side, your thoughts, your analysis on this subject. So it's kind of you go to a party, you have to first listen attentively to all of the guests, all of the people in the party. Those are going to be the authors. Yeah? So you need to read a lot. That's participating in the conversation. And then you need to think about it. Yes, you need to start connecting the dots, right? When you start connecting those dots, then you are elaborating like your own argument. Yes. So after a while, when you have collected, gathered a variety of authors, a variety of opinions and researches of these people that are there with you, then you present the connection that you have made and also your own view on that point. That is something that this guy here, Stuart Green, calls a productive conversation. Productive conversation. And that is a topic that is going to be in the next slide. I don't know if this is clear, this metaphor uh, for what you're going to be. So far, so good. Great. Perfect. Well, I'll continue then with the next one. Then Stuart Green says that this kind of academic conversation is not just about stating your opinion. I mean, of course, you're going to say your opinion, you're going to engage with what others have already said. But in this case, it's more about how you gather all the rest of the opinions, how they pass through your particular and specific lens, especially because I mean you are a special person. All of us are special. So the fact that you read a lot of articles, a lot of theory, they are going to be understood in a very unique way uh, by yourself. So you start elaborating and connecting the points and also stating what you have uh, connected or understood about this. And this is what he called a productive productive conversation. I'm going to read this part just because I think it captures the essence so well. And well, if you have any questions, of course, go ahead and tell me. It says like this. It goes like this. Entering an academic conversation is not just about stating your own opinion, but about understanding and engaging with what others have already said. Stuart Green, he stresses the importance of productive conversation as the goal of academic writing and inquiry. That is, you need to articulate previous research projects, articles, theory, and academic experience with your own. So you need to articulate other previous research projects, articles, theory, and academic experiences with your own experience and research so that they co-constitute, attention to that word, co-constitute a body of knowledge. It means that whatever you have read, seen, and also what you have experienced and thought constitute a body of knowledge uh, that is that in that is unique in elaboration, yes, and produces a productive conversation that is a new light or a new way to see certain aspects of your topic. Yes, this is basically something that is uh, constructivism, how we understand that knowledge is not just absorbed, but actually constructed by all of us. So you're going to be part of the body of knowledge that we have, of course, in very small and creative ways. It's not that we are going to become, I don't know, the next Noam Chomsky, the next Steve Jobs in a way, or the next Stephen Hawking. Maybe not, but we are in a way contributing a little bit from our perspective because we are located in a very specific scenario, in a very specific practical scenario. So, well, that is the most important part of what literature review and the theoretical framework is about. It's about this, you know, reading, collecting conversations, connecting dots that nobody has seen between these theories, and in this way you construct and you contribute with your knowledge in that sense. So far, so good. Sorry, I was too wordy. Can we go next? Okay, good. Well, now we're going to something a little bit more practical. I just mentioned that academic writing uh, is a discourse, as the linguist James Paul G puts it. And that discourse has something very special about the way it elaborates phrases, the way it writes phrases. For example, if you notice the way I've been speaking for this presentation for the last half an hour, is a mix between being sometimes too technical, but sometimes I use colloquial expressions. It's because the speaking, even in an academic context, can derive and play with these both registers. However, when it's academic writing, usually the register that is dominant is the formal register. So, for example, we wouldn't write in an academic report or in a research project, the kids really like my teaching method. Yes, kids really like my teaching method. And we would rather say something like, students demonstrated positive engagement with the implemented pedagogical approach. Yes, yeah, I know it sounds a little bit like said by a normal person and said by a very educated person, but it's not like that. It's simply the way in which we try to state something without being subjective. It means without telling other people that it's just what I like or it's just what I perceive. No, it's actually telling the rest of the community that if you observe this class objectively, you will conclude that there was positive engagement. So students demonstrated, it means it's evident, positive engagement with the implemented pedagogy. Same thing with the second. I think this might work well. Well, it's okay, it's a good phrase, but we are going to base our writing not on what I think, not on my subjectivity, yes, what I liked or what I think could be something. No, I'm basing my sentences, my writing on evidence, basing my writing on what is observable, measurable, on extended data that I have collected. So, in this case, we would better say the evidence suggests this approach may be effective. And when I say the evidence suggests, I actually need to have real evidence. How do you get that evidence? Well, with different collecting different tools to collect data. Well, and it's important to maintain and continue with the academic tone. Yes, as I said before, avoid colloquialisms. Okay, that's something that might help. So remember, change subjective things like or I think for demonstration, yes, something that is observable, or for the evidence that you have collected with your methods. What are your methods? The field diary, right? What are your methods? Some interviews or some surveys. What else are your methods? The lesson plans. Okay, so those are the methods to collect information. Also, the testings. No, if you're going to test the skills before an intervention, before a pedagogical intervention, and then you test skills after a pedagogical intervention. That's also a method to collect data. Well, oh, sorry. So far, so good. It's fine. No questions here. Good listening. I'm not checking the chat, so I don't know if there are questions there. Let me see this for a while. Oh, yes. So, well, let's continue here. When you have a literature review, I'm going to give you like some ideas for you to collect, let's say those articles, those books, those websites, of course, websites linked to Adobe, to a magazine. The idea is that you can collect them effectively. So number one is like, if you're going to have tons of articles, tons of pieces, so synthesize them effectively. For example, the chart that is in the guide number 2 is a great tool for you to just include the title, the year, the author, what is this about, and why that is relevant to your research. So if you start collecting this literature review in these kinds of charts, you are going to have a very well structured research project. Especially, you will know where you are and where you can go. Because if you don't know where the research is right now in 2025, maybe you are bound to repeat something, or you are in danger of maybe saying the obvious or concluding something that is already widely known. The idea is that we have like some questions, even if they are very specific, some questions that are, I'm not so going to say original, please don't, it's not necessary, but some questions that are relevant to the place. So how do we do that? By exactly knowing where the conversation is in this moment. Well, some techniques to analyze critically, you're going to ask yourself, what is similar in this article to my research? And what is different? Yeah, for example, I checked some of your work, and some of your work had like a different literature review that was similar to your research, but sometimes it was the same topic with a different population. You know, it was not children but adults, or it was the opposite. It was the same population, children, but the topic was slightly different, and there was transference that were able to make. So going quickly here, citations for format and requirement is APA 7 edition, APA, yes, APA 7 edition. Of course, avoid plagiarism. Remember, the plagiarism is present the work that has been done by someone else, presented as my own, AI included, of course. Well, create a theoretical framework, select the researches and the papers that are relevant to the question. This is exactly what we mentioned before. In the chart in guide 2, you need to ask yourself, is this relevant to my question? I mean, is this article actually touching 2 or 3 points that are crucial to my research question? If yes, then you should include it in the literature review. If not, then it's going to be out. Okay. And this one, gap identification strategies, is you're going to identify, recognize where your research question and your research projects is innovative, or where it can do something that has been done not so often. Like, for example, recognize a place, a procedure, a specific situation that has not been addressed in a particular area or geographical zone. For example, something that I am really concerned about is that in Colombia, there is a very little body of research about mental health in teachers and professors, not only in schools, but also in universities. I recently read one of those papers, and the the literature review is really scarce. So there are two or three papers in Colombia about mental health in teachers and professors. So, for example, that is something not for you, of course, because you are doing your research in language teaching. But what I want to show with this is that this area is not widely explored. Yeah? Like mental health in teachers and professors in Colombia is something that is a gap. We don't have enough information. We don't have enough research and investigation. So that's a gap, and we need to identify that. A gap could be a new place, could be a new procedure, could be a specific situation that is very, very specific in the way it happens. I don't know, learning English in nature, I don't know, in a specific place. So it's important also to identify what is, I don't know if innovative is the word, but what is not, what is really different about our research in terms of what is happening, not on what I have to create or make up, but in terms of what is happening. Well, I'm going to skip this one because maybe you're not doing this one soon. So I'm not going to skip it, but go really real quick about it. So the methodology writing. In the methodology, what we have to write is the whole process of what happened in our research project. Of course, emphasizing the way in which we collected information, the methods, how we structure the research, what we did after with the information, who the participants were, the instruments and tools, the procedures that we use to analyze that, and of course, the validity and reliability of these analysis and the tools and the information that we have. It is also important that we ourselves can recognize and acknowledge what weak points we have in our research projects. We finish a research project is the best that we can do, but we can recognize, well, there is a weak point here, and is that my research project is based only on 10 participants, so we cannot conclude that these results are valid for everyone else. Well, at least it's going to be valid for maybe small groups of students, or maybe there was something special about this place, and we don't know if this works in Japan the same way it works here. So we need to be aware of all those things. We cannot we cannot just arrive to conclusive results all the time. Okay, so this is basically what the methodology does. You write about the design, what you did with your research project, the methods you use to collect data, the the selection of the participants, who the participants were, the instruments and tools, the analysis procedures, and the validity and reliability of those measures. Can we trust those analyses based on what? Okay, that's the methodology part when we write about what we actually did in our practicum side. Well, and then there are some common academic writing errors, especially for us as Spanish speakers. We have a tendency to say, for example, instead of based on, we say based in, but the correct one is the one on the right. So I'm going just to highlight it in green for you to see that this is the correct based on the results. We have a tendency to say a lot, but a lot is belongs to a register that is a little bit more informal. So it's a lot better to include a significant number. And even better than a significant number is to mention why the number is significant. Yes, it's because it's over 70%, it's because it's over 60%. Why is that number significant? Okay. It says a significant number of students demonstrated improvement. How do we know that that is a significant number? Well, you need to check the analysis uh, that you are conducting. Maybe because it's more than 60%, you can say that's a significant number. So it can be compared to maybe a previous situation. Remember that in grammar, keep it simple, but in a formal tone, so the reader can understand, but at the same time, the register is in the academic zone. Also, consider the word choice, consider the words that you're going to select. Instead of my students, maybe we can say participants in the research. Of course, they were your students. Of course, there were people who were with you for a long time, but it's mostly the participants. Some minutia. Well, going a little bit fast, just not to take a long time here. Everything is okay. Do you have any question? So far, so good. Thumbs up. Good, good. Well, and then we're going to connect your practicum to the research writing. I mean, there is absolutely everything. Everything is about your practicum scenario. What everything you do there is what is going to be written on your research writing. So the idea is that you are going to transform the observation, your field diaries, to analysis. And how do you do that? Well, you start always with a section of description. So you're going to describe first something that is more or less neutral, and then you're going to move to the analysis. So it means I first describe what is happening. This happened first, this happened second, this happened later on. And then I'm going to analyze. This suggests that the teacher, or this suggests that the methodology, blah, 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 blah. My interpretation is that the method focuses on this and not much on this. That is going to be more an analysis. If you keep them separate, that is going to be a very good writing part, because the reader is going to be able to differentiate between what actually happened in the classroom and what your take on on those events is. Okay, what is your take on those things? Well, what you just wrote in your research project. For the quantitative data presentation, quantitative is the ones that you can count, percentages, numbers, grades. You can select charts, tables, percentages, special indexes. Special indexes, I mean, something like, for example, the Yanni index of inequality, for example, is like from 0 to 1. If the index is closer to 0, then the more equal a country is, and the closer it is to 1, the more unequal a country is, something like that. Of course, we don't need that because we're not sociologists. But just in case you see some special index that can help you measure difficult things, as for example, I don't know, I really don't know if there is an index to measure motivation, but maybe you find one. Maybe you find a way to measure motivation in numbers. That is part of the quantitative data presentation, how you present quantitative data. And in the other And the opposite side of it, in the other spectrum, is the qualitative data interpretation. The qualitative data interpretation is going to be phrases that are repeated, categories of answers, terms and concepts that are repeated by the participants. Also, I remember in this study that I just mentioned, in which there were mental health issues in teachers and professors. Some phrases and categories and concepts that were repeated were like burnout. People spoke a lot about burnout, emotional disconnection, social disconnection. Yes. So those things are concepts and things that are repeated in different interviews. So you present that analysis in a qualitative data interpretation. Okay. As I said before, I think this is repeating a bit, but I just repeat it real quick. Support your claims with evidence. Whatever you say is supported by numbers, by phrases, by categories, by a logical sequence of words, and by specific examples of what happened in the research practical, in the practical exercise. So if you say that students didn't pay attention, then you will have to list the this 12, 14 times in which they didn't pay attention and describe it so that your readers understand that you're not saying this just because children don't pay attention, but because there is actual evidence or uh, there is actual um, could be picture, but there is actual evidence there that this happened. Okay? Of course, keep your objectivity, yes, all the time. Be aware of research weaknesses. I already say, yes, if you think that your research is pretty well conducted, really nicely conducted, but it has, of course, some weaknesses, announce them. Don't be afraid. Yes, say, well, I did this research, but the problem with this research is that it covers only the speaking skills. I really don't know if this impacted listening skills, but that's a limit. Okay, so that's a limit that I impose on myself. I say I'm not going to cover listening skills. I'm just focusing on speaking skills as an example. Okay, and also avoid overgeneralization, as I said before. Not because your research uh, concluded something for a group of 15 people, it doesn't mean it's universal and now it applies to everybody around the world. Of course, we know that culture differences and languages, first languages, of course, influence language learning a lot. Well, and finally, for you to organize your documents or your literature review, remember to use the chart in the guide too, very useful. Also, this website, My Beep, is interesting for you to keep like your references like in one place. So you know that one research is going to be in one place, that is this website. I really recommend this website. It's easy to use, just in case you want to give it a try. I don't know if the university has something similar, but this is external, so there we have it. And what else? Of course, have a final review or a checklist. In a checklist, that does exactly this. Check all of your citations in the text. The citations in the text. They need to correspond to a final entry section on your references. You cannot include, for example, I don't know, a parenthesis that says Bermudez 2022, and then when you go to references, there is no article or there is no book reference without Bermudez in the year 2022. I mean, all the correspondences have to be made. Yes, you need to check that they are correct. And also, of course, proofread your text. Just the easy way to do it is just reread it the normal way, reread the whole document. And if you find a mistake, well, correct it, but also press Control F to see if the word that maybe that you in which you found a in which you just found a mistake, maybe is repeated multiple times. Maybe you made a mistake multiple times. So it's good to use the Control F strategy to see the repeated mistakes. And of course, finally, ask a friend to read it and see if she can understand. Yeah, that's a good measurement of good writing. Good writing is understandable, is clear, is intuitive. Yeah, so if you give it to someone who can read it, of course, before the professor, before me, that's also a good strategy. Okay, but these are like the basics, yes, for academic writing in research. I hope it works for you, especially not so much about having a formal tone because that's superficial, but about the concepts. No, academic writing is a discourse, and we have to respect it in this way. And also, imagine that you need first to listen to experts before you making your contribution, and your contribution has to elaborate and connect the dots. All of these are belonging to all of these authors. So your new contribution maybe is not something super innovative, but it has a new light. No, it has your own vision. That's like the main thing. Well, we finished this theoretical part of the our EPICA. Uh, I don't know if this is okay. I don't know if this helps you think of your research project and how you're going to write. I hope it is. I don't know if you have questions or comments in this moment. Everything's all right, it seems. Okay. And then we have a section that is about the formats and documents, a brief overview. You already know this, and I guess you know more than I do because this is the first time I take one of these courses. But don't worry, I already check it out for you, and the idea is that I'm going to present the documents that are needed for phase two. Okay, so we have like the lesson plan, and there isn't much to say about this. I'm not going to cover all of the spaces because most of them are self-explanatory. You know, like grade, of course, date, teacher, your name, and the topic. And of course, the time is set for 2 hours. And let's say that the most important thing is that you never lose focus of what your general objective is. This has to be like the whole axis of the rest of your lesson. Okay, the research general objective. What is the aim, the main objective? And if it's a 2 hour lesson, my recommendation is that the skills you're going to work are always 2 or 3. Yes, 4 is too much for any class, and 1 is just too little for a 2 hour class. So always try to include in your lessons like 1 or 2 or 3, 2 or 3 skills. Okay, some of them are going to be more focused, more, let's say, you're going to emphasize them more than the others. So attention to that. And what else? Well, we have here classroom routines. This is really well explained. But something that I wanted to focus on is that roughly, I say roughly, not entirely, but uh, roughly we have 3 stages in every class, which is the presentation stage, the practice stage, and the production stage. Production stage. So it's like how you present, introduce the topic. How can you have your students practice that topic? Remember that a topic is usually better if it's communicative, if it's something that is used for a purpose in our life. Yes, how to do things with words. Just to remind you of Ostel, that famous theoretician. So it's like the topic is not usually simple present or present perfect. It's usually how to book a hotel, um, how to speak on the phone with a customer service person. More or less the idea in communicative approaches. Of course, it depends on your research. It's a lot better like that. What else here? Well, attention to anticipate some issues. Maybe you know that the internet fails, so you have make sure you have a plan B if something is based on the internet connection. And make sure that, for example, if you finish your lesson plan before, maybe you have something extra to do, or the opposite, maybe if you don't have time, how can you accelerate a little bit mm, to accomplish most of the objectives? Of course, don't force it. And this is something that is connected to the first part. What is the connection? What is the relation between this lesson and your research project? Why is this lesson important? Okay. Then we continue with this one, this other format, información del escenario de práctica, información del estudiante, del profesional externo que acompaña. Este externo no soy yo, este externo es la persona que pues está encargado de la práctica, pues a menos que sea en la comunidad de lengua, eh, en el caso en el que sí sería yo, pero ese es el caso titular que los apoya a ustedes. Y la información del docente de acompañamiento, bueno, pues ese sí sería yo. En este caso, de este formato, este es el, este es el formato de, sí, este es el formato de Field Diary, ¿no? De diario de campo. Listo. Y este es el formato de asistencia, muy importante. Todos estos formatos, aunque están en español, los llenan en inglés aquí en la actividad principal. Entonces, I taught English, I taught the topic about traveling, traveling in bus en Colombia. Y esa fue la actividad, teaching eso, teaching that. Y bueno, este es el formato de asistencia. Y este es el plan de trabajo, ¿no? Que se espera, bueno, voy a hacer tal actividad para tal fecha y se espera que se tenga esto. ¿Cuál es el objetivo de esa práctica? Los resultados de aprendizaje, que son un poco los objetivos de aprendizaje. Y esto pues desde el principio debe estar listo y firmado pues por la profesional titular que los acompaña a ustedes. Si es la comunidad de lengua, pues soy yo. Y bueno, ¿no? Recommendations for formats. Recomendación para estos formatos es leer la guía 2, se entienda lo que se, for you to understand what's asked for you to complete the formats. Fill them out in English except address and institutions names. Those are in Spanish, of course. It's not like Avenue of the River. No, that case is Avenida del Río. Okay. So that cases, those cases are in Spanish. Do not include sensitive information in this format. Sometimes, I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes people share, they suffer very bad illness. Well, don't share that information there because it's too sensitive. I guess nobody but you have access to that. If you want to share it with someone you trust, select it carefully. Maybe you need to select, maybe you want to reveal some information because it's important to the course director or to me, to the tutor, but try not to leave these in formats, okay? And the tutor information in the case of the profesional externo, only if your practicum is in our language community. Well, that is like a brief overview of what is expected for this phase 2, which I think you all will have work on during these weeks. So, well, that's all for me. I don't know if everything is okay, if you have any questions, if it's all right, if it helped, especially the first part about the metaphors on how to see writing in research. Los escucho, los leo, read you in the chat, I listen to you. Una diapositiva, any slide that you want me to go back to.
No, teacher, but maybe hello, teacher. I'm
Hello.
sorry. And I would like to know if it's possible that you share with us the presentation, maybe.
Sure, sure, of course. I don't know if I can, I don't know if there is an official channel I can do that through, or if it's okay to share it here.
I think in the chat it is okay.
Okay. In that case, I'll do it. Just check.
And I have another question because in the attendance form I didn't write the like the explanation of the activity. I just put the topic and the name of the activity. That it's okay, or I
That's
have to. Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It's much better if you write a description of the activity, but well, there's not enough space there, so that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just preparing the file to share with you the presentation. Yeah, it's ready. I'm going to put it in the chat. Well, there it is. I don't know if it has been uploaded yet.
Yes, we got it.
Thank you. Well, but great. Just give me a second just to get the attendance list because you will need it to present in the phase two. I'm just going to download that. Ready. I already downloaded the attendance list and I'll be sending this to all of you for you to attach to your folder. And well, thank you very much. That's it. Any other question? Of course, we're here. And well, I'll be checking everything from you. Good, good, no problems. About the ones that are in the EPICA because you couldn't attend the ones that your tutor gave, that's okay. I'm sending the attendance list to you for you to attach it to the folder, and so your tutor can see that you actually attended. That's it. You understand that, right? Yes, yes. That's why I downloaded the attendance list. Heimer, Angela, can you show me a sign that you understood this? Okay. Repito, la idea de que yo descargue la lista de asistencia para enviarla a todos ustedes y que ustedes la pongan en sus carpetas como evidencia de que asistió y pues su tutor va a ver en esa carpeta eso y le va a calificar que sí asistió. Que está bien que hayan asistido a estas sesiones. Esa es la razón. No problems, no problems. Sí, está bien. Okay, guys. So that's what we have. Thank you so much for attending this EPICA. I hope it is useful for you to apply to your writing, especially in the research project. And have a good weekend. Sort of. Still Thursday, but have a good weekend. Goodbye. Anything you need, please remember to connect with me to Michael.Bermudez in Teams or the mail of the platform. I'll be there. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye, tutor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye, teacher. Thank you.